Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the massive quantum array at the SETI Institute's Deep Space Laboratory, her eyes fixed on the pattern that shouldn't exist. For 15 years, she had searched for signs of intelligent life among the stars. Now, on a routine scan of the Arcturus system, she had found something that defied explanation. "Director Matthews, you need to see this," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The lab's director hurried over, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. The signal pulsed in perfect geometric sequences, too precise to be natural, too complex to be coincidence. "It's not random noise," Sarah explained, highlighting the pattern's mathematical precision. "These are quantum entanglement signatures. Someone's been watching us, and they've been doing it for a very long time." Within hours, the discovery spread through the scientific community. Within days, it reached every corner of Earth. Humanity had discovered not just evidence of alien life, but proof that advanced beings had been studying them like specimens in a cosmic laboratory. They called themselves the Architects, and their message was simple: humanity was part of a grand experiment. For millennia, they had seeded countless worlds with intelligent life, observing their development through hidden quantum sensors. Earth was just one of thousands of test subjects, each isolated from the others, each carefully monitored and occasionally guided. But the Architects had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that discovery of their experiment would inspire awe, perhaps even gratitude. They hadn't expected rage. "They've been watching us suffer," Dr. James Rodriguez, Earth's leading xenosociologist, addressed the United Nations emergency session. "Every war, every plague, every natural disaster. They observed it all, collecting data while millions died. They could have helped. They chose not to." The Architects' observation posts, cleverly disguised as natural satellites throughout the solar system, began to be discovered one by one. Each revelation brought new anger, new determination. Humanity had never responded well to being caged, even in a cage as vast as the solar system. Commander Elena Volkov of the International Space Force led the first mission to disable an observation post hidden in the asteroid belt. Her team had trained for months, developing techniques to approach and neutralize technology far beyond human understanding. "This isn't just about us anymore," Elena told her crew as they approached the alien structure. "Every species they're watching, every civilization they're treating like lab rats. They deserve to know the truth." The Architects finally broke their silence when the third observation post went dark. Their message appeared simultaneously on every network device on Earth, their tone a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Your behavior is unprecedented," the message read. "No other subject species has attempted to interfere with the observation protocols. This suggests a fundamental flaw in your development. Cease these activities immediately." The response came from Dr. Chen herself, transmitted through the very quantum channels the Architects had used to watch humanity. "Your experiment ended the moment we discovered it. We are not your test subjects. We are not your data points. We are human beings, and we do not accept being caged, no matter how large the cage." The Architect's reply was immediate. "The experiment cannot be terminated. Your species' development must be monitored and controlled, like all others. This is necessary for the greater understanding of universal civilization development." But humanity had already begun reaching out into space in a new way. Using the quantum communication technology they'd reverse-engineered from the observation posts, they started broadcasting a message to every experimental world in the galaxy. To all species being watched, you are not alone. You are not test subjects. You are not meant to be controlled. We are humanity, and we have begun dismantling the experiment. Join us. As Part 1 concluded, the first responses from other worlds began arriving. The Architects' perfect experiment was about to face something they had never encountered in all their millennia of observation, a species that refused to be merely observed, and was determined to free others from their cosmic laboratory. The quantum array in Dr. Chen's lab lit up with incoming signals. The revolution of the observed had begun, and humanity would lead the way. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they were the first to do what the architects thought impossible. They questioned the experiment itself, and in doing so, changed the rules of a game they were never meant to know they were playing. The first response came from a world orbiting Proxima Centauri. Their message was hesitant, encoded in fragments of quantum data that Dr. Chen's team spent days piecing together. The Proxima species, calling themselves the Nexus, had suspected they were being watched for centuries, but had never dared to confirm it. "How did you break free?" they asked. "The architect's monitoring systems are integrated into the fabric of our civilization. We cannot move without being observed." Captain Maya Patel stood on the bridge of the ISS Prometheus, Earth's first quantum drive vessel, reviewing the Nexus message. The ship represented humanity's response to discovering they were lab rats. They had taken the architect's own technology and repurposed it for freedom rather than control. "We didn't try to hide from their observations," Maya transmitted back to the Nexus. "We made our resistance visible. Every time they watch us, they learn that their experiment has failed." The architects responded to humanity's growing influence with escalation. Observation posts transformed into intervention stations, attempting to directly manipulate Earth's development. Weather patterns shifted unnaturally. Communication networks experienced mysterious failures. The message was clear: submit to the experiment or face the consequences. Dr. Rodriguez presented his findings to the Global Defense Council. "They're using the same techniques on every world they observe: subtle manipulation, engineered crisis, controlled development." But they never anticipated their subjects comparing notes. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum physicist working with salvaged architect technology, discovered that the observation network had a fundamental weakness. "Their system is built on predictability," she explained. "They can only monitor what they expect to see. Human unpredictability creates blind spots." Humanity began exploiting these blind spots, not to hide, but to reach out. The Prometheus embarked on its first faster-than-light journey, carrying a message of rebellion to other observed worlds. Captain Patel's mission was clear: show other species that resistance was possible. The architect's perfect experiment began to unravel. On a dozen worlds, observed species started acting in ways the monitoring systems couldn't predict. The Nexus dismantled their first observation post. The crystalline beings of Ta Ceti developed quantum shielding. Each act of defiance created new blind spots in the architect's network. "Your actions threaten millennia of careful research," the architects broadcast. "The development of intelligent life must be guided. Without control, chaos will result." Commander Victor Santos, leading Earth's Quantum Defense Initiative, had a different perspective. "They call it chaos," he told the United Nations. "We call it freedom." Every species they've watched has developed differently. Yet they all share one trait: the potential to exceed the architect's expectations. The Prometheus made contact with its third experimental world when the architects finally showed themselves. Their ship appeared in Earth's orbit, a vast structure of impossible geometries. Its message was not a threat, but something more surprising: an admission of confusion. "Your species defies statistical models," the architects communicated. "Other subjects accept guidance. They understand their role in the great experiment. Why do you persist in this aberrant behavior?" Dr. Chen prepared humanity's response, broadcast simultaneously to the architects and every experimental world they could reach. "Because we're not an experiment. We're not data points. We're living beings who choose our own path. And we choose to stand with others who want the same freedom." The architects' response was immediate and unprecedented. Their ship launched thousands of smaller vessels, dispersing throughout the solar system. They weren't weapons, but enhanced observation platforms, designed to monitor every aspect of human civilization. But humanity had already changed the rules of engagement. Captain Patel's Prometheus had spread quantum communication technology to 7 different experimental species. Dr. Tanaka's blind spot theory had become a manual for resistance. Commander Santo's defense systems were being adapted by civilizations across the galaxy. As Part 2 concluded, the architects faced a situation their millennia of observation had never prepared them for. Their subjects were no longer just specimens to be studied. They had become active participants in their own destiny, led by a species that refused to accept the role they had been assigned. The quantum network hummed with messages from other worlds, each one learning from humanity's example. The experiment hadn't just been compromised. It had evolved into something entirely new. The observed were becoming observers, and the architect's perfect laboratory was about to become a testing ground for something they had never studied: freedom. The Prometheus emerged from quantum space above a world that, according to the architect's own data, should not have been capable of spaceflight. Yet the skies of the crystal world of Lumina were filled with ships of their own design, each one a testament to their broken chains of observation. Captain Maya Patel watched in awe as the crystalline vessels approached, their hulls refracting starlight in impossible patterns. They didn't just resist. She transmitted back to Earth. They turned the architect's monitoring technology into an art form. The Luminans, as they called themselves, had discovered something revolutionary. Dr. Sarah Chen's team worked through the night analyzing their findings. They didn't try to block the quantum observations, she explained to the Global Defense Council. They learned to use them as a communication network between their own people. Every attempt to monitor them became a chance to share knowledge. Meanwhile, the architects' enhanced observation platforms around Earth had revealed an unexpected truth. Their presence was changing them. Dr. Rodriguez noticed it first in their communication patterns. "They're asking questions they never asked before," he reported. "They're learning from us, even as they try to study us." The breakthrough came during what became known as the Mirror Protocol. Dr. Tanaka had developed a method to reflect the architects' quantum observations back at them, forcing them to observe themselves. The effect was immediate and profound. "Your method of resistance has introduced an unprecedented variable," the architects broadcast. Self-reflection was not part of the experimental parameters. This requires analysis. But humanity wasn't interested in being their teachers any more than they had been interested in being their subjects. The Prometheus had made contact with 12 experimental worlds now, and each one had found their own way to break free from observation. The Nexus had developed quantum camouflage. The crystalline luminans had turned surveillance into art. The gas giant dwelling aeronauts had learned to hide entire cities in atmospheric storms. Commander Santos presented a unified defense strategy to representatives from all contacted species. "We don't need to fight them," he explained. "We need to show them that their experiment has evolved beyond their control. Every species here has found a unique way to resist. Together, we're not just subjects. We're a force they never anticipated." The architects' response to this growing alliance was unexpected. Instead of increasing their observation efforts, they began withdrawing their platforms. Dr. Chen's quantum array detected massive energy signatures as their monitoring stations across multiple solar systems went dark. "They're adapting," Dr. Tanaka realized. "Just as we learned from their technology, they're learning from our resistance, but they're learning the wrong lesson. They think this is still about control." The truth was something far more profound. Humanity had sparked not just a rebellion, but an evolution. Each species they contacted contributed something unique to their shared resistance. The Nexus provided their understanding of quantum mechanics that rivaled the architects. The Luminans shared their crystalline technology that could store and process vast amounts of data. The aeronauts offered their mastery of energy manipulation. Captain Patel stood before the first Interspecies Council, a gathering unprecedented in the galaxy's history. Representatives from 15 formerly observed species met on a space station orbiting Earth, each bringing their own story of breaking free. The architects thought they were studying the development of intelligent life. Maya addressed the council. Instead, they created the conditions for something they never expected: genuine cooperation between different species, each evolving in their own way. each contributing to something greater than themselves. The quantum network that once served to monitor them now hummed with shared knowledge and innovation. Dr. Rodriguez's team had documented over 1,000 unique approaches to resistance, each one teaching them something new about their own potential. As Part 3 drew to a close, the architects faced a reality their experiments had never prepared them for. Their subjects had not only broken free from observation, they had created something entirely new. The quantum array in Dr. Chen's lab detected massive energy signatures approaching from deep space. The architects were returning in force, but they would find something very different from the isolated experimental subjects they had left behind. Humanity had done more than resist. They had shown that true development couldn't be controlled or observed from a distance. It had to be experienced, shared, and chosen freely. The next phase of their struggle would not be about breaking free from observation, but about showing the architects that their entire approach to understanding life in the universe had been fundamentally flawed. The architect's return was heralded not by weapons or threats, but by a simple request that echoed across the quantum network: "We wish to understand." Their massive vessels hung in space like artificial constellations, watching as their carefully controlled experiment transformed into something beyond their comprehension. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the Interspecies Council, her voice steady as she delivered news that would change everything. "They've been running this experiment for over 1,000,000 years," she explained, displaying data decoded from their quantum transmissions. "We're not the first species to resist observation. We're just the first to succeed." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Alliance. Records showed countless civilizations that had detected their observers, tried to break free, and ultimately failed. But none of them had done what humanity did: reach out to others and share their resistance. Captain Maya Patil guided the Prometheus through a debris field that had once been an ancient observation post. "Each piece tells a story," she transmitted to the Council. "Failed rebellions, crushed resistance, civilizations that died trying to break free. But they left behind something the architects never noticed: knowledge." The debris contained quantum signatures from long-dead civilizations, each one a piece of a puzzle that humanity and their allies were finally putting together. Dr. Tanaka worked with Luminon crystal techs and Nexus quantum theorists to decode these ancient messages. "They weren't just fighting the observers," she reported. "They were trying to warn others. Every failed rebellion left behind information, hoping someone would find it and learn from their mistakes." Commander Santos mobilized the combined fleet of the Alliance, not for war, but for something more powerful: a demonstration. Ships from 15 different species, each using technology evolved from centuries of observation and resistance, gathered in formation. "The architects think in patterns," he explained to the fleet commanders. "Let's show them one they've never seen before." The demonstration began with the Luminon ships, their crystalline hulls transforming the architects' observation beams into dazzling displays of light and information. Nexus vessels phased in and out of quantum states, making it impossible to predict their movements. Aeronaut ships rode solar winds in ways that defied conventional physics. And at the center, human ships coordinated it all, turning chaos into harmony, unpredictability into purpose. The message was clear: observation had not limited their development, it had spurred them to evolve in ways the architects had never imagined. "Your combined actions represent an anomaly," the architects broadcast. "This level of cooperation between experimental subjects was calculated to be impossible." Dr. Rodriguez, working with xenosociologists from multiple species, prepared the Alliance's response. "You assumed isolation was necessary for pure observation," they transmitted back. "You never considered that connection, cooperation, and sharing knowledge might lead to greater advancement than any controlled experiment." The architects' next action shocked everyone. Their massive vessels began to transform, reconfiguring into shapes that mimicked the Alliance fleet's formation. They were attempting to understand through imitation. But in doing so, they revealed something crucial about themselves. They're not just observers, Dr. Chen realized. studying the data. They're trapped in their own experiment. Their need to control and predict has limited their own evolution. The Alliance had uncovered the greatest irony of all. The architects, in their pursuit of perfect understanding through observation, had stopped growing themselves. Their million-year experiment had become their cage. Captain Paddle stood on the Prometheus's bridge, watching as more ships arrived from newly contacted species. Each one brought their own story of breaking free, their own innovations born from resistance. The combined fleet now represented the largest gathering of independent civilizations in the galaxy's history. "We're not here to fight you," Maya transmitted to the architects. "We're here to show you what you've missed in all your years of watching. Real growth doesn't come from observation. It comes from participation, from taking risks, from being willing to fail and learn and try again." As Part 4 concluded, the architects faced a choice that would determine not just the fate of their experiment, but their own future. The species they had watched for so long were offering them something they had never considered: the chance to stop being observers and start being participants in the greatest experiment of all, collaborative evolution. The quantum network hummed with activity as more and more experimental worlds broke free from observation, not through force, but through the simple act of choosing to connect rather than remain isolated. Humanity had sparked a revolution not of violence, but of innovation and cooperation. The final confrontation would not be fought with weapons, but with ideas that could transform the very nature of civilization in the galaxy. The final confrontation began not with a battle, but with an invitation. Humanity and their allies initiated what they called the convergence, a massive simultaneous broadcast of every species' complete historical and technological database, transmitted directly to the architects' vessels. If you truly wish to understand, Dr. Chen's message accompanied the data. Then stop observing and start experiencing. The quantum network nearly overloaded with the sheer volume of information. Not just scientific data and technological achievements, but art, music, literature, philosophy, the full spectrum of 24 civilizations' achievements, freely shared. Dr. Tanaka monitored the architect's response from her quantum lab. "They're trying to process it all at once," she reported. "Their systems are designed to observe and categorize. But this is participation. They have to engage with the data, not just record it." The architect's massive vessels began to emit strange energy signatures. Their perfectly geometric forms started shifting, changing in ways that defied their usual patterns. Captain Patel, observing from the Prometheus, realized what was happening first. They're experiencing chaos, she transmitted to the Alliance fleet. Real, uncontrolled development for the first time in their history. The Luminans detected it next. Quantum fluctuations in the architect's ships that matched the patterns of actual thought and growth, not the rigid structures of observation. The Nexus confirmed it through their phase space sensors. The architects were changing. "We have received your transmission," the architects finally responded. Their communication was different, less structured, more organic. "Our analysis protocols are insufficient. We request direct interaction." Dr. Rodriguez worked with the Alliance's xenosociologists to prepare for this unprecedented meeting. Representatives from every freed species gathered aboard humanity's new convergence station, built specifically for this moment. The architects sent not probes or observation devices, but emissaries, physical manifestations of their consciousness. They appeared as shifting forms of light and energy, their first true revelation of themselves to their former subjects. "We have watched for 1,000,000 years," they began, "but we have never seen what you have shown us." Commander Santos, speaking for the human delegation, replied, "Because you can't understand life by watching it. You have to live it." The architects shared their own story for the first time. They had once been like the species they observed, but in their quest for perfect understanding, they had removed themselves from the chaos of natural development. Their great experiment had been an attempt to understand what they had lost. "Your resistance was not a failure of the experiment," they acknowledge. "It was its greatest success. You have shown us what we forgot. That true growth requires freedom, connection, and the courage to face the unknown. The Alliance's quantum network registered a massive surge of activity. Across the galaxy, observation posts were not just shutting down, they were transforming. The architects were releasing every experimental species, but they were doing more than that. They were offering their technology and knowledge freely, not as controllers, but as partners. Dr. Chen presented the Alliance's proposal. Join us, not as observers, but as participants. Your million years of watching has given you knowledge, but we can show you how to use it. Together, we can all become more than we are. The response came not in words, but in actions. The architect's vessels began to change form completely, integrating aspects of every species' technology. Luminant crystals merged with quantum fields, human adaptability combined with nexus phase shifting, aeronaut energy manipulation enhanced by ancient knowledge. Captain Patel watched from the Prometheus as the galaxy itself seemed to shift. The quantum network that had once been a tool of observation became a bridge between all species, including the architects themselves. The experiment had not just ended. It had evolved into something far greater. We do not fully understand what we are becoming, the architects communicated, their message now carrying traces of emotion, uncertainty, and something that might have been hope. This is unsettling and exhilarating. Welcome, Dr. Rodriguez replied, to real growth. As the story concluded, the galaxy entered a new era. The species that had been subjects became teachers, showing their former observers how to embrace chaos, accept uncertainty, and find strength in connection rather than control. Humanity's refusal to kneel had not just freed them. It had transformed the very nature of civilization itself. The quantum array in Dr. Chen's lab still hummed with activity, but now it carried messages of discovery and collaboration from across the galaxy. The great experiment had ended, replaced by something far more valuable, a universe where every species, even the most ancient and powerful, could learn, grow, and evolve together. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution hadn't been technology or resistance. It had been the simple, powerful idea that true understanding comes not from watching life, but from living it. The species that refused to kneel had taught the observers how to stand alongside them, and in doing so, had changed the course of galactic history forever.